Hello everyone. Today I'm going to start a new series on how to use the animal controller from scratch with any animal from the store. But I'll be using the polyar raccoon from my forest set to show you the most of the features of it. And I have a simple plane with a camera and a direction light. So let's find the model for the raccoon and drag it in the machine cameras to follow the players. Since that rigging, or you can go to Malbers animations, common, gizmos right here to the correct positions. And we have animal controller, and I'm going to add the animal component. And here you will see that we already have a rigid body and we have the component. Now, what do we need to do first? We need to set the pivots, which are these gizmos right here, to the correct positions. So in general, go to pivots, and here on the editor, I'm going to set it here, which is this is the hip. It should be right between the back legs. And the chest, we're going to do the same and set it in the front legs of the animal. Let me disable the editor gizmos, and let's set those two pivots at the same height, which will be the same Y value. And they are right here. You can change the color of the pivots by clicking on the context menu right here. Let me copy and paste and draw the spine of the animal. Now the next step is to add an animator controller. Now let's create a new animator controller that it will be used for the raccoon. Let's call it raccoon animal controller, and we are going to use it here on the animator. Now on the advanced tab, let's create the required animators parameters for the animator. Let's click right here, and they'll be created. Automatically. And now for the new animal controller 1.3 and up, we're going to use the state on and the mode on triggers that will be used to improve the communication from the animator to the animal controller. Let me create a new folder for all the assets for the animal. Let's call it raccoon, and let's drag the animator right here. And for the raccoon, we're going to create the first state, which is the idle, and this will be created here on the asset folder. Let's move it to the folder we have already created, and let's rename it raccoon idle. All animal state assets will use the same name your animal has. So how the animal controller works: the animal uses states, mode, and stance to move. But let's start with states. States are animations that cannot at the same time. So now that we have the state, we need to create a substate machine on the animator. Let's call it idle. And we need to create a transition from any state to this idle substate machine. So right click to any state and make transition to idle. And here on the conditions, we are going to need the state, on, and the state. Add a new condition, and state on need to be triggered, and state need to be equal to 0. Why 0? 0 is the ID for the idle state. And the ID 0. This ID is this value right here. And let's rename this to idle. And now inside of this substate machine, we're going to create our first animation. And let's find on the raccoon folder all the animations. And here are the idles. And let's drag idle 01 to the scene. Let's call it idle 1. And we need to use the tag idle, since it's required for the animal controller to recognize which animation is playing. And now if we hit play, you will see that the raccoon is idling. As you can see, the raccoon moved forward, so we need to set the root bone z value to 0. And let's fix again on the animal the position of the pivots. Right here. Perfect. If we hit play, the animal should stay in the same place. Now, in case of the idle states, we can have several animations that we can play. So, in the raccoon, I have an idle scratch, an idle look right, idle look left, and so on. So, first I'm going to create an exit transition for the idle animation. And also I'm going to create from entry another transition to the idle animation. I'm doing this because I want to play random idle animations, but we don't have the random parameter on the animator. Here on the advanced panel, we can find the optional animator parameters, and we can add the random parameter. Now back on the animator, let's select the entry transitions, and the condition I'm going to add is random equal to 0. Now I'm going to select the transitions and the animation state. And I'm going to duplicate it 5 times since I already have 5 idle animations. Do this if you only have more than 1 idle animation. And if random is equal to 2, I'm going to play this one. This is equal to 3, I'm going to play this one, and so on. Let me change the animation to idle look left. Left, and drag it right here, idle look right, and drag it right here, and let's repeat the process for the other animations. Now, idle is the only animation that needs a transition to itself. That way, I can use the random behavior to play the 5 animations. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here I'm going to set the range to 5. Remember to check that all of them have the tag idle. So if I hit play, the raccoon will play random animations. You see the random parameter changing right here, and the animal is doing all the random idle animations. And just like that, we have finished the idle state. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to do the locomotion state.
com a mão.
Welcome back, guys. So now that we have the idle state working, let's work on the locomotion state. Now, here on the states, let's create the locomotion state. You will see that the asset has been created in the same place as the idle state. Let me do a quick pause and let's make the camera follow the animal. If I hit play, you'll see that the camera is not moving. Here on the raccoon, let's create an empty game object and call it internal components. Set it right here, and let's go to Malbers animations, common, Cinemachine, set camera states, and here we can use the Cinemachine main target prefab and drag it into the internal components. This is an empty game object that will be used as a target for the Cinemachine, and to see better the raccoon. Yes, that's better. Okay, now that we have the locomotion state, we need the locomotion's animations. So let's create an empty substate machine, call it locomotion, and add the transitions from any state to locomotion. And as the conditions, I'm going to use state on, and I'm going to use state equals to 1 and 1. Is the ID for the locomotion state. Now, inside the locomotion substate machine, I'm going to create a new blend tree. Let me call it locomotion, and I'm going to use the same value as the tag, since the raccoon locomotion state needs a tag locomotion. Now, inside this locomotion blend tree, I'm going to add new motions, 2 at first, so I can show you how to make the animal work with them. Very few animations. In the first motion with the threshold 0, I'm going to add the default idle, and on the threshold 1, I'm going to add the walk forward. Now, we also need input to move the animal, so I'm going to go to Malbers, input, and I'm going to add the Malbers. Input. This will create the horizontal and vertical connections to move the animal. Now, if I play and press the W key, he will move forward, and if I release the key, he will stop. You can see I did not use turning animations, so if if you don't have them, we can fix that using the speeds. Some states, like idle, locomotion, and fly, use speed sets and speed modifiers. By default, when you create the animal component, I give you the ground speed set, and this speed is connected to the idle and the locomotion state. If you open the speed dropdown, you will find a walk, trot, and run speed modifiers. Each one has a connection with the vertical parameter. On the animator. For walk, the vertical speed is 1, and you will see it here on the locomotion blend tree set in the threshold 1. For example, if I add another motion, and instead of walk I use the trot animation, trot forward, I will use the value of 2 for the vertical parameter. And here on the trot, I also have this parameter right here. The start index is set to 1, which is walk. If I hit play, I will walk. If I set it to 2, the start index, I will trot. Perfect. Now, so what happens if I do not have turning animations? You just need to increase the rotation that the animal will do additional to the root animation. So, for example, if I set it to 10 in the walk and trot speed modifiers, on those speeds, I can turn with only a few animations. Also, if my animations are not root motions, I also have a solution for that. Let me go quickly to the locomotion